how to analyze a deal so that you can determine your buy box and figure out what is a deal, quote unquote, for yourself. And just so you know why I'm looking at Hueytown, right? If you look at the map of Hueytown, you're gonna see that roughly this property is about just a little bit southwest of Birmingham. And if you ever watch our affordable housing podcast, right? Our affordable housing and real estate investing podcast, I had a podcast I did with Daisy Sebastian. We talked a lot about the top in demand areas for families specifically. And Hueytown is one of them. So that's why we're looking at this area. And today I just want to go through with you how to actually look at this deal. And let's see, this property is a 4 bedroom, right, in Hueytown. 4 bed, 1.5 bath. So definitely for 4 bedroom, I would definitely recommend at least having 2 toilets. I mean, for the most part, this property looks okay. I mean, the floor might not be your most modern color, but it looks clean. It looks move-in ready. Some carpet in one of the bathrooms. I mean, that bathroom is fine. It's not like the most modern one. You could probably just do some touch-up paint there. But hey, nothing wrong with this one. I mean, it's relatively move-in ready. I just got to put aside some money for it. I mean, this wall looks a little old. Maybe I'll just put some touch of paint as a budget. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look up the HUD FMR. FMR stands for fair market rents. If you just look up HUD FMR on Google, you can get the first link up top, and you're going to see that right here it says access to small area FMRs. When you see this, you can click on look up FY 2025 small area FMRs. Click on the state, click on your county. This is in Jefferson County. And Hueytown is 35023. And you're going to see in 35023, the rent ceiling for a 4 bedroom is 1810. All right. Typically, that number is your ceiling rent. Usually, it includes things such as utilities like water, electricity. And if you don't cover those utilities, then you have to find out what the utility allowances are for that type of utility. It might be water, it might be heating, depending on your electric or gas, and deduct that utility allowance based on your bedroom count from the rent ceiling. Now, the other interesting part here is not a lot of people sometimes will say, hey, that's my rent. But that's usually not the case because you have to look at least one more factor. So if you look up the property, let's see, let's copy and paste this over 2700 Daffodil Ave in Hueytown, and you go to affordablehousing.com and you go to the market rent estimator, you plug in the address, you plug in your bedroom count. Now all of a sudden, you can see that the average rent is 1556. Now that number 1556 is lower than the 1810. I would be much more comfortable using 1556 than the 1810, obviously, because that also includes utilities typically, right? But also because there is a thing called the rent reasonableness test, which means that you have to take the lower of the two rents when you compare the market rent with the rent ceiling or the payment standards. And just so you know, I'm not making that up, if you look up the Housing Choice Voucher Program Guidebook, right, Housing Choice Voucher is what was previously known as Section 8. And if you go to section 2.2 in the guidebook, it says that in conducting rent reasonableness, the PHA or the Public Housing Authority must determine whether the rent to the owner is a reasonable rent in comparison to rent for other comparable unassisted units. So this means obviously the size, the unit type, they all matter. But you typically don't see 4 bedroom apartments, so I'm pretty confident that these 25 units within a 4 mile radius, because we're a little bit more suburbia in this area, is they're likely all single family homes. So that's why I'm comfortable using 1556. So that's why I'm plugging the number right here in 1556 as my rental assumption. And for those of you that want to follow along, if you want to copy the spreadsheet, just go to affordablehousing.io, not .com, and then click on Get Deal Analysis Tool. And that's the fastest way for you to get a copy of the spreadsheet. All right. Now, let's go back to the spreadsheet. I'll input the numbers right here. 215, 700. 215, 700. Great. I got my rents right here for my rental, for my rehab calculator. I'm gonna go to my rehab calculator. I'm gonna leave in 1,500 bucks for the roof, just in case there's any patchwork that needs to get done. Here in row 6, in row 46, I'm putting in about 5 bucks to keep the landscaping clean and tidy until someone moves in. For my painting, I'll probably put aside 300 square foot for some paint. just in case there is some touch-up paint or I want to freshen up one of the rooms. Now, I don't think I need to do any flooring updates for the carpet, but if I want to, I'll probably leave aside like 300 square feet of LVP if I want to make one of the rooms a little bit more modern. And row 132, typically, I prefer to put in high pressure assisted toilets. And the reason for that is because I want to make sure that I never get a clogged toilet call. And a reason for that is because if you get a plumber out there, it will probably cost you $200 for that trip. And then if they have to replace the toilet at some point, that's another $250. So for me, I'd rather spend up front like $450 just to get in the toilet in there so that I don't have to worry about it. All right. So as I go through all this stuff, HVAC, let's see, water heater, servicing. Let me see. I'm using on my laptop today. Install HVAC cage, one each 900. And I've had a HVAC stolen before in Birmingham, so that's why I'm including this as part of this deal. All right. So 8520. Great. So I got $8,500 for my rehab on this property. And now I'm gonna get my taxes and my insurance from the payment calculator. Taxes 93, insurance is 167. So I'm doing 93 right here. And then for my insurance estimate, I'm gonna do 167 times 1.2 because I'm assuming that 167 estimate earlier was for someone that was estimating that this property would be used for a primary residence property. And then you use it as an investment property, then typically insurance companies will view it as a riskier asset. So that's why they're going to charge you more. So that's why I'm adding a 20% premium to this. In row 32, right, in B32, I'm putting a 10% maintenance. And the reason I'm putting in 10% maintenance is because I want to make sure that I'm putting aside money every single month for repairs and replacements I know are coming down the road. These are things such as your roof, your HVAC, all those factors matter because if you are a long-term buy and hold investor, you have to understand that that's going to happen. And if you don't put in expenses aside right now, you will be underestimating your expenses. So you'd be lying yourself and overestimating your profitability. Don't be that person and don't listen to gurus out there that say, oh, my cash flow is this is my rent, this is my PITI, my principal interest tax and insurance, and this is my cash flow. Right? There are people out there that teach us that. It blows my mind. Either they're trying to mislead you or I don't know what they're doing there. So something for you to keep in mind. Sorry. So I got 10% for property management. I got 5% for vacancy expenses. Again, now that you've seen that able-bodied folks have probably might have a 2-year term limit, you gotta be very, very careful, right? Then you got 10% for your property management expenses, right? For my down payment in F19, I got B4, which is my asking price, times my down payment percentage. So I'm putting in 54 grand roughly on this property. I got about 2.5% closing costs on this property. Bump that up a little bit. $85 for more renovations. For my principal, I got 161,000. I got I think it was close like 7.875% interest rate. So if you rent this property out as a 4 bedroom for 1557, you'll cash flow negative $299. That's a negative 5.3% return. So that's not a good deal, right? You think about it. Not a good deal. Again, this is not investment advice. I'm not soliciting any investments on this call. Just simply showing you how to make this all make sense. All right. Now that was based on the renovation of 8,500. So let's look at the numbers. Like, let's say you made the mistake and you did 1810 instead, which is the payments error. Well, that's a $200 difference almost, right? That's the difference between making money and losing money sometimes. But if it's 1556, what do I need to buy the property for? Assuming everything else stays constant for my cash and cash return in E9 to equals to a 8% return. Let's say I go to 100 grand. Oh, there you go. That's a deal. How about I go to 120? Nope. 110. 115? 114 probably. That rounds up to 8. So I would have to buy the same property for almost $100,000 less for me to have the numbers make sense with a 5057 rent. Because now I can finally cash for $254. All right. This is something you gotta be very, very mindful of. You gotta be very, very careful of. These are the criteria that matter. You gotta figure out what's going on here. This is not 7.6% return. Now I'll do two more scenarios for you. Let's say I overestimate a rehab, right? It's all rent ready, blah blah blah, and I my rehab is half. Great. If my rehab is half, so my cash out of pocket is a lot lower, now maybe I can afford up to 118. So the money that I just saved on the renovation can go back towards the purchase price, right? Still, you're not close to it, right? But I wanted to show you what that looks like should you decide that you get some additional information, or you're just wondering to yourself, like, hey, what would make this a deal? What if I'm just overestimating my renovations, right? And I, once I get someone out there, I can gauge what the rehab actually looks like. Great. Well, there's another scenario. Well, let's say you go to 6.875. Let's say your interest rates drop by a whole point overnight. And this can happen, right? You have to understand there's a couple dynamics happening right here. And in order for you to understand that, right, you got to understand how the 30-year mortgage interest rates are affected by the 10-year treasury yield. Now, historically, the spread between the 10-year treasury yield, which is what the federal government issues to borrow money, it's called T-bills or treasury bonds. The spread between that T-bill and the mortgage interest rate has typically been about 1.5 to 2%, but we've seen it as high as 2.5, 3%, and when it got really, really bad in the 1980s, it was almost close to 6%. But right now, it's probably closer to 2.5, 2.3. Okay, so they're getting much closer back to normal. So as that narrows, right? If that narrows half a point because you're getting better news from the trade war, maybe you're getting better, or Trump might be saying, hey, this is the new person that I'm instituting as the federal chair. And that new incoming federal chair is now going to the market, like your bond traders, and telling them, hey, I'm going to be in office next year. And I'm going to start lowering my interest rates as soon as I get in. So now you have future expectation of lower interest rates. That's how it works. That's how you can move the market. So if you don't pay attention to what's going on, right, just remember the 10-year yield is heavily driven by the bond traders. So they could all of a sudden drop half a point there, and now there's spread certainty, now there's less risk, and now your spread also narrows. And that's how you can lower your interest rate from 7.875 to 6.875 by a full point. And you can see when I did that, my cash and cash return in E9 also jumped up. So now I might say, hey, maybe I can pay up to 126. Great. So now instead of 118, I can pay up to 126. My buying power, based on the last scenario, simply because the market moves one whole point, my buying power just went up by $8,000. All right. And that's what can happen overnight. So pay attention, not just to the headlines, but pay attention to what's happening to the 10-year treasury yield, because that will drive a lot of what's happening in the market. And stay in touch with your lenders, right? If you guys need lenders, just let me know. I'm happy to refer you to one of my lenders. And I hope this is helpful, everybody, right? I hope you copy my homework today, right? You can analyze the same deal I analyzed today using the same spreadsheet from affordablehousing.io, not .com. And I hope you start your own YouTube channel, because at some point someone's going to ask you, hey, why do you think this is a deal? And you can tell them that this is a deal because you've been looking at properties for the past 659 days. Might that give you some confidence that you know what you're doing? I certainly hope so. All right. I hope you all have an amazing Saturday. I hope you spend a lot of time with your family and friends today, because that's what life is all about. All right. See y'all tomorrow for day 660. Have a good one, everybody.